Tonight, I have the pleasure of serving as your MC as we celebrate the release of hashtag Say Her Name, Black Women's Stories of Police Violence and Public Silence by Kimberlé Crenshaw. In order to properly celebrate the release of this urgent and vital body of work, we will have live readings of excerpts from the book, performances, and a special panel conversation with the brilliant author and the hashtag Say Her Name Mothers Network. Now, folks, if you don't know, this book is an extension of the hashtag Say Her Name campaign, which began back in 2014. The goal of this campaign was to center Black women's experiences with state-sanctioned violence and police brutality. At the core of this work is the application of art, storytelling, testimonies, and rituals to highlight the names of Black women, girls, and femmes whose lives were stolen from us. Say Her Name begin with a searing image of a white casket at City Hall. Reading an excerpt from the Say Her Name book, we welcome to the stage the powerful and dynamic Executive Director of the African American Policy Forum, Professor Kimberlé Crenshaw.
I am standing in an air-conditioned auditorium thinking about Michelle Cusseaux and the countless other Black women killed by the police whose deaths no one was paying attention to. My audience on this balmy spring day is mostly made up of public interest lawyers, students, and faculty. I am remembering the courage that Michelle's mother, Fran Garrett, exhibited after Phoenix police killed Michelle in her own home. Michelle's story, like those of too many others, would have ended when Sergeant Percy Duprat stole her life had she not been born to a tenacious mother who refused to let her daughter's name be forgotten. Fran was determined that her daughter's life and death would not be reduced to obscurity, another statistic that no one counted. Michelle was killed just 5 days after a cop gunned down Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri. After seeing the community protests take shape there, Fran decided to march Michelle's casket to Phoenix City Hall. In this brave act of protest, she joined a powerful tradition of Black women resisting and denouncing the state violence that directly threatens them and all too often destroys their families. Fran's march to Phoenix City Hall was a flare in the night. Fran's radical act, literally placing her daughter's casket at the door of municipal power, not only demanded that Michelle be seen, but also rendered visible the police killings of other Black women. The sorrowful procession of Michelle's coffin to City Hall left a searing image that spoke to the many ways in which Black women's fate has been left at the hands of the police, while their stories have been marginalized and sometimes erased. While Michael Brown's killing justifiably sparked a wave of national protest over lethal police shootings of Black men, the killing of Black women like Michelle had yet to be memorialized in widespread activations and denunciations. Fran offered a powerful and moving witness to the fact that Black women were also losing their lives in circumstances that spoke to the disregard of Black life and family bonds. There was no sound reason for their stories to be banished to the shadows of our consciousness, mere afterthoughts in the litany of savagery that has come to constitute anti-Black state violence. Fran's act reminded us all of the obvious fact that slain women's mothers don't grieve for them any less. Their children don't cry for them any less. Their siblings don't mourn for them any less. And we should not protest their killings any less than we do the killings of their brothers, fathers, and sons. 6 months later, as I look out at the audience, I wonder who among them will know Michelle Cusseaux's name. Would they know of any other daughters who were stolen like Fran's was? Or was the erasure of these horrific losses difficult to interrupt because of the reflexive ways that the very notion of anti-Black police violence defaults almost exclusively to our endangered sons? To make the patterns of erasure visible and audible, I invite the audience to join me in doing something new. I ask those audience members who are able to do so to stand. I tell them, when you hear a name you don't recognize, take a seat and remain seated. I promise then to invite the last person standing to tell the seated audience what they know about the person whose name no one else recognized. Then I call out the names, slowly, deliberately, loud enough for even those seated in the back of the auditorium to hear. Eric Garner, Mike Brown, Tamir Rice, Philando Castile, Freddie Gray. I'm always a bit surprised when one or two people don't recognize even the first few names, but fewer than a handful have taken their seats by the time I lift up Freddie Gray. The vast majority of people recognize these men, and they know the common risks that link their fates. They are Black, and they did not survive an encounter with the police. I pause for a moment. I ask the audience to look around. The room is quiet and still. People take in what they have demonstrated, group literacy about the vulnerability of Black people to police violence. At the moment, it seems a completely obvious reading of the social knowledge that is minimally necessary to ground any conceivable collective action. I continue. I say, Michelle Cusseaux, and then comes the whoosh of dozens, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of people taking their seats. It is the sound of silence. The sounds of people taking their seats mount as I continue the roll call. Tanisha Anderson, Ayanna Stanley Jones, Kayla Moore, India Kager, Shelly Frey, Corinne Gaines. One person is left standing after India Kager. But I continue anyway so people can hear more names. At last, I release that last person from any obligation to speak. I remind everyone that after all, I'm a law professor. I only say the last person standing will tell us something about the name that they recognize to ensure everyone's honesty throughout the exercise. There are nervous titters as the last person takes their seat. This moment releases some of the tension in the room. Yet the point still hangs over us. The silence about Black women who've been killed by the police has distorted our collective capacity to respond. We cannot address a problem we cannot name, and we cannot name it if the stories of these women are not heard.
Thank you, Kim, for just sharing what is just a small part of what is going to happen tonight as we unfold these stories. We see what has been happening around the country. We have all borne witness to it. We see what has happened as our children are never protected from the horror of our deaths and the marking of our bodies as killable. We see this with the recent police killing of a 21-year-old Takia Young in Ohio back in September. Young was a pregnant woman and mother of two who was shot by a police officer through the front windshield of her car. We sadly see this again in the case of Miriam Carey, who was killed 10 years ago in Washington, D.C. On October 3rd, 2013, Miriam Carey drove through a police checkpoint that was not clearly marked in Washington, D.C., with her 1-year-old daughter in the car with her. Within just 7 minutes, 6 Secret Service agents fired 8 rounds into her car, and 2 Capitol Police officers shot 9 rounds into her car. Miriam was declared dead shortly after arriving at the hospital. Her 1-year-old daughter, who was in the car with her, survived. Miriam did not fire any shots, and there was no gun in her car. To commemorate the life of Miriam, the very first annual Miriam Carey Butterfly Brunch was held this year on Sunday, October 8th, 2023, in New York City. This beautiful event was organized by her loving sister and devoted member of the #SayHerNameMothers Network, Valarie Carey, who is here with us today. She is here to read an excerpt from the book. The words of Valarie Carey, Miriam's sister. Please welcome the amazing artist and performer, Kim Yancey.
My name is Valarie Carey. I'm the sister of Miriam Carey, and I'm a part of the #SayHerNameMothers Network. Miriam was a beautiful girl, beautiful young lady. She wanted to be successful in life, and as she got older, she decided to go into the field of health, and she became a registered dental hygienist. I'm actually older than Miriam by 7 years, so there's a gap. I remember when she was a baby, because she was so round and chubby, my father nicknamed her Butterball. And I guess my favorite memories really started to develop when she got older and when we would actually hang out more. Well, that was my little sister. The day that Miriam was killed, it was a Thursday, October 3rd, 2013. I believe it was a Thursday. I was in my office preparing for an event I was hosting that evening with Terry Williams. And so I was just really trying to get my thoughts together, what I was going to say. And I'm sitting at my desk, my laptop's open, and I use AOL. And so I saw on the main page there was a blurb about something happening in DC. I didn't click on it because I was busy. I was in my zone, and I had a TV at the time in my office, and I didn't have it on. And then my phone started to ring. It was a little after 2. My phone just started ringing incessantly from different phone numbers. A lot of the numbers I now know were coming from the DC area. And I actually picked up one of the calls because it was a Connecticut area code number. And at the time, my sister was living in Connecticut. She had just recently moved there and purchased a co-op. And so I answered the call because I thought it maybe is my sister. I didn't know why all these calls were coming through, but they weren't registered in my phone, so I wasn't going to answer it. And when I answered this one particular call, there was a man on the other line. He was a reporter. He asked to speak to me. And then he started asking me questions about Miriam. What type of car did she drive? Did I know where she was at? And I just stopped and said, I'm not sure where this line of questioning is going. But before I could finish, he said, well, apparently you haven't been watching the news. I need you to turn on your TV to CNN. And when I turned on the news, I saw what looked to be my sister's car. I saw what looked to be my niece being held by an officer. And there was a footer that read, "Suspect killed."
Thank you, Kim, for that powerful reading of Valarie's story of loss, survival, and remembrance. We honor the story of Miriam and will continue to uplift her name and aspirations. Valarie Carey, Miriam Carey's sister and a valued member of the hashtag Say Her Name Mothers Network, will be joining us in conversation later. The hashtag Say Her Name Mothers Network is a community of mothers and family members of Black women, girls, and femmes killed by police that work to provide support to other mothers and families who have also been victimized. This community is in many ways a sisterhood of sorrow. They lean on one another for healing and support in what is otherwise a very isolating experience. It is through the solidarity of support and understanding that they can also come together to laugh, to have moments of joy, and to continue to advocate for change in the law enforcement and communities across the nation. On August 1st, 2016, in Randallstown, Maryland, Baltimore County Police entered 23-year-old mother Corrine Gaines' home regarding traffic violation charges. Gaines said the traffic stop violation had been traumatic and had ultimately led to the miscarriage of her twins. She recorded the interaction with the cops in her apartment and posted some of it live on social media. The officers fired into Corrine's home, killing her and injuring her 5-year-old son, who she was holding at the time she was shot. A jury later awarded Gaines' family a settlement for wrongful death. That award was overturned by a judge, but reinstated on appeal. To read the words of Rhanda Dormeus, Corrine's mother, please welcome Kim again.
My name is Rhanda Dormeus. Oh, Corinne was my 23-year-old baby. Oh, she was a very, very feisty young lady from toddlerhood, very outspoken, kind of bossy at times. She was just matter of fact. Growing up, she did very well in school and excelled in all her classes. She went to a college prep high school called Baltimore City College High School, and she was interested in political science. During her senior year, she lost interest in political science because there were so many things going on in society that contradicted what she was being taught. I think that was the beginning of her starting to reach out and learn more about the government outside of what was made available through the media. She wanted to go behind the scenes and do her own research. She was an avid reader. Oh my God, I could buy this girl 10 books in a week and she would go through them. She read urban novels, but she also read books about Marcus Garvey and other informative things. She graduated on time, and she chose to go to Morgan State University. She only stayed 2 semesters, and she found out she was gonna have Cody. So I started looking at different colleges that would allow young mothers to have their children because I wanted her to stay in school. But then she was like, "Mom, you know, that's gonna be too much." So she directed her attention to her other passion. She got a cosmetology license and started doing hair and makeup. Oh, she enjoyed it. She bought 2 homes as rental properties that she used for income. She bought her own vehicle. She was independent. After Michael Brown, there was a whole snowball effect of police murders. Freddie Gray was a neighbor of ours. I didn't personally know him, but I knew him from the neighborhood, and it was literally a few blocks away. Everything that unfolded was literally around the corner from where she grew up. That was our community, and our community had been robbed. She was an activist role model. She wanted to teach because she was self-taught. She just wanted to enlighten the masses about things that were going on around her. She has a few spoken word poems that are out. Oh, she would always do her little rants on Facebook or Instagram about things that were going on in the world. Justice for Corinne. What would it look like? It looks like an officer shouldn't be allowed to make lateral moves within the department if they've had other issues. Now, this was not Royce Ruby's first shooting. Justice for me is getting officers better training, making sure they adhere to policy and not create new ones as they go along. The officer who shot Corinne was found not guilty because of the statutes of such and such and such of the police code or this and that. They chose not to indict the officers. In September 2016, an internal police investigation concluded that Officer Ruby, who had previously been involved in a fatal shooting, was justified in shooting Corinne Gaines and would not be charged. He was subsequently promoted. We went to civil trial. It was February 2nd, 2018. It was 4 white jurors, 2 black jurors, who came up with their own settlement amount of $37 million. Now, they came up with that money based on the information that was presented from evidence. The county appealed, and on February 15th, 2019, the day before the anniversary of the settlement, the judge decided to overturn it based on qualified immunity, which had been on the table 3 times before the trial even started. He did that because he never expected us to win. He never argued for us to have qualified immunity because he didn't expect us to win based on the circumstances around the case. Once the jury heard all of the evidence, they came back with $37 million. The jurors. So that says a lot. Well, needless to say, we are going to appeal. It is not about the money. We have to get the truth out there. When they decided to decline criminal charges, oh, they thought we were gonna go away. They want us to go away. I just want everybody to know that the fight continues. There is no dollar amount that can remotely replace what we have lost. Oh, I can do without the dollars. I want accountability. I want the people involved to be held accountable. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb and speak for all of us and say, I want them to pay. I want them to feel our pain. They need to know. They need to come from behind the wall of protection and be held accountable. That is what I want. Corinne felt like she was in a fight by herself, so she would be so happy that I am continuing her fight. In her last hours, she felt like she was alone because that is the way the stage was set for her to feel alone. And I am going to continue battling for her because she had a message to get out. It wasn't received by everyone in the way that she wanted to present it, but I am going to clear it up for her. I am going to clear it up for her. I'm going to deliver it the way I know she would want it to be delivered.
We will be hearing one more excerpt this evening. On September 15, 2015, India Kager was murdered at a 7-Eleven gas station by the Virginia Beach Police SWAT team, who threw flashbang grenades at the back of her car while her 4-month-old son, Roman Kager, was in the back of the vehicle with her. India died shortly afterwards on the pavement on the side of the road where her body lay overnight. Her 4-month-old son survived, though he lost his hearing in his left ear due to the sounds from the flashbang grenade. Here are the words of Gina Best, mother of India Kager.
Someone asked me, Gina, are you always sad? And I'm like, yeah. And when I say sad, let me explain what I mean by that. You see the triggers on social media. Are you reliving this all the time? I'm like, I will never not live it. Never not live it. This is now a part of us. Now, I hate the part of my life where I felt at one point that it wasn't, where I could not relate to someone having been killed by the police. For that, if anything has come out that I can hold on to, it's valuable after the murder of my daughter. Now, I can look at another human being, another mother or father or child, and say, you know what? I do see you. And no one has the right to take your life because you're not in the right place. I don't believe any of our children were in the wrong place. Roman's birthday was May 11th. He's 5 now. He's got complete hearing loss in the left ear from the flashbang. He's disabled as well from the trauma. Oh, he's acting out. He's asking for me. He is really full of rage. He's waking up, screaming in his sleep. He calls me Mima. I want Mima. I want Mima. Our children are traumatized for life. And once, while his brother Evan was in his bed, he said, Grandma, I see angels all around. And I'm like, yes, you do. So how I keep them alive, how I keep India alive, is with chimes, wind chimes. One is a butterfly, because I call all my granddaughters butterflies. And there's another one just past the crystals, and there's one with crystals and just the sounds. I tell Evan every time he hears the chimes that it's his mommy coming by. She's always there, and he loves that. You've heard me say that I walk around with an amputated heart, and that is literally the case. Here is a bleeding heart. I envision that when we say her name and we remember, we amplify our beautiful daughters and sisters and queens. I like to imagine India answering back. I like to imagine every last one of our babies, our loved ones, answering back. And I'll imagine a world where not only are we saying their names, but you all are doing it too, where we're not speaking against the silence. Tell someone, speak their names. It emboldens us. It gives us strength and encouragement in those very lonely times. because there are no words to articulate the level of pain that we live with. It's off the spectrum. But we're here. We are here. We're going to do something about this, sisters. It's starting with us, and we won't quit.
Thank you, Kim. And thank you for those stories, those powerful testimonies. And now, please join me in welcoming back the author of Say Her Name, Professor Kimberlé Crenshaw.
Good evening again. So we are so delighted to have all of you with us tonight. And it's always an honor for me to be in the company with the amazing mothers of the Say Her Name network that I would like to introduce to you tonight. First, let me welcome Valarie Carey, sister of Miriam Carey. And Rhanda Dormeus, mother of Corinne Gaines. I want to highlight some important work that the mothers have done to keep their daughters and sisters' names alive and their demand for justice active and real. You've already heard about the Carey Butterfly Brunch that was organized a couple weeks ago by, I see Gina. I'm gonna give Gina her very special moment. That was organized in honor of Valarie, of Miriam. And it was a beautiful, beautiful event. And can I say that you were dressed in butterflies in honor of your sister, and we all gathered to release butterflies. It was absolutely gorgeous. And then the Tatiana Jefferson Project sponsored an annual gala honoring the Tatiana Jefferson. This was begun by her sisters, and the objective is to raise resources for supporting scholarships for young people in STEM. So as you can see, the Mothers Network is busy all year round, lifting up their daughters, their sisters, and making their names known to the wider community at large. I also want to introduce Gina Best, mother of India Kaker. Gina's words are poetry, as you've heard. Everyone brings so much of their daughters into the network so that we know who they are, we have a sense of what their lives were, and we want to remember them not for the worst thing that ever happened to them, but for the lives that could have been, that should have been. The part of our work that we have embraced the most is not simply pushing back against the injustice, but trying to bring to life some of the little things of their lives that might be lost. We get a special window into these things through the things that their sisters and mothers remember about them. A mother, for example, who finds her daughter in a field of performers because of her daughter's unique choice of a royal blue colored clarinet. a magic moment of butterflies landing on your sister at Niagara Falls, every soft reverberation of a wind chime, a singular and salient reminder of a daughter's continued love and presence in the lives of her sons and her mother. It is important, though, to remember that all of this does not come without a cost to the family members of slain women. In the book, as you heard, Gina Best describes it as walking around with an amputated heart. Sadly, we've seen the toll of this amputated heart, the toll that it's taken on beloved members of our Say Her Name network, members who lost their lives due to strokes and other life-threatening, stress-related illnesses. We'll always remember and honor the lives of Vicki Coles-McAdory and Cassandra Johnson, both early members in our Say Her Name Mothers Network, who worked tirelessly to put an end to the police violence against Black women. Vicki's niece, India Beatty, who she raised like a daughter, was killed by police in 2016, and Cassandra Johnson's daughter, Tanisha Anderson, was killed by police in 2014. At the beginning of this year, our AAPF family mourned the loss of Amber Carr, sister of Tatiana Jefferson, and also a dedicated member of our Say Her Name Mothers Network. Amber was an advocate for the lives of Black women everywhere. In fact, just a few weeks before her death, Amber stood before a court and testified to how much her family lost when her sister was killed by a Fort Worth police officer in 2019 in the presence of her young son and Tatiana's nephew, Zion, now age 11. We are reminded over and over again that when Black women are killed by the police, when they are taken from this earth, the hole that is left in their absence is unfillable. For families like Amber's, Vicky's, and Cassandra's, their grief endures, and too often, sadly, it grows and kills. It was a privilege to know these women in their life, and an honor to commit the rest of our lives to saying their names until true justice is achieved for all the valued and loved members of the Say Her Name Mothers Network. This is a large part why the book Say Her Name, Black Women's Stories of Police Violence and Public Silence is so critical, particularly in this moment. First, the families lose these women, and then the fact that they've lost them becomes lost to their communities, becomes lost to history, becomes lost to the movement. All around the country, we are seeing the consequences of the erasure of our history, whether it's Governor DeSantis's attack against African American studies or new social studies standards in the same state by which children would be taught that there were benefits to enslavement. All of these are branches of the same tree, a tree whose roots are thoroughly rotten. We need to ensure that our history and our lives are not forgotten or silenced. The first of many steps in that process is to say her name. Remember the lives of women who've been victims of state violence in this country, and work with the Say Her Name Mothers Network to push back against the conspiracies of silence that surround their deaths. Now, AAPF has many rituals towards this end. One that we visit every year is to say the names of all the women, girls, and femmes who have been killed at the hands of police that we have learned about. Each year, we read every name. Last year, we read the names of 178 people. Unfortunately, that number today is about 200. One of our phenomenal artists in residence, Abby Dobson, will now join us to sing the song that she wrote for the campaign, Say Her Name. Please, if you are able, stand and join us as we remember a handful of the lives that have been lost. Say her name. Say her name. India Kager, say her name.
India Kager.
Say her name.
India Kager.
Say her name.
India Kager.
Corinne Gaines, say her name.
Corinne Gaines.
Say her name.
Corinne Gaines.
Say her name.
Corinne Gaines.
Michelle Cusseaux, say her name.
Michelle Cusseaux.
Say her name. Say her name. Miriam Carey, say her name.
Miriam Carey.
Say her name.
Miriam Carey.
Say her name.
Miriam Carey.
Layleen Polanco, say her name.
Layleen Polanco.
Say her name.
Layleen Polanco.
Say her name.
Layleen Polanco.
Sandra Bland, say her name.
Sandra Bland.
Say her name.
Sandra Bland.
Say her name.
Sandra Bland.
Breonna Taylor, say her name.
Breonna Taylor.
Say her name.
Breonna Taylor.
Say her name.
Breonna Taylor.
Pamela Turner, say her name.
Pamela Turner.
Say her name.
Pamela Turner.
Say her name.
Pamela Turner.
India Beatty, say her name.
India Beatty.
Say her name.
India Beatty.
Say her name.
India Beatty.
Ayanna Stanley Jones, say her name.
Ayanna Stanley Jones.
Say her name.
Ayanna Stanley Jones.
Say her name.
Ayanna Stanley Jones.
Say her name. All the names I'll never know. Say her name. Black women matter. Say their names. Black girls matter. Say her name. Say her name. Say her name. Thank you. You may be seated. As you take your seats, Abby will bring us a song that captures our aspirations for a livable future. I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all the chains holding me. I wish I could say all the things that I should say. Say 'em loud, say 'em clear, for the whole round world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that's in my heart. Remove all the bars that keep us apart. I wish you could feel what it means to be me. Then you'll see and agree
everyone should be free. I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things that I should do, though I'm way overdue. I'll be starting anew. Well, I wish I could be like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found I could fly. I'd soar to the sun, look down at the sea, and I'll sing 'cause I know. Yeah, I'll sing 'cause I know. I'd sing 'cause I know how it feels to be free, how it feels to be free, how it feels to be how it feels to be free, until black women are free. No one of us will be until black women are free. No one of us will be free.
Please join me again. Thank you, Abby. What a powerful, powerful offering. I just had to sit with the silence for a moment. Now, to build and enhance the powerful testimonies we heard tonight, we're now joined by Valarie, Rhanda, Gina, and Kimberlé. Thank you for joining us here to talk through Say Her Name in an intimate discussion. As we enter this conversation, we want to center your voices as we navigate how we can move forward and continue our advocacy for your loved ones and all black women who are victims of police violence in this country. I'm going to first ask each of you a question about what remembrance and advocacy looks like, and then ask some questions that are open to all to answer. So please feel free to jump in. We want it to be an open conversation. We also have index cards circulating around the room. And so if you have a question, please put it on the index card, pass them to a staff member, and I will be uplifting some of them after the conversation. I will start with Valarie. This year marks the 10th angel anniversary of Miriam's killing in Washington, D.C. You recently hosted the Miriam Carey Butterfly Brunch in New York City. Can you walk us through that experience, what it was like for you, the heaviness of the date, particularly since the police killing took place at the nation's capital? What does justice for Miriam look like?
So this year marks the 10th anniversary of Miriam's killing. Each year from 2013 on her birthday and her death day, I would hold space, sometimes in Washington, sometimes in New York, and release butterflies on her birthday and her death day. And this year, it actually took 10 years of thought, 10 years of just being stuck in my head as to how I wanted to honor her this year in the 10th year. And while it's been 10 years, and that sounds like a long time, it really feels like yesterday. I don't know where 10 years went. I can't believe for 9 of those years I've been releasing butterflies. But this year in particular, I chose to have a butterfly brunch, to have an event where supporters and people who knew Miriam can come together and have food and celebrate her life, remember her life, with releasing the butterflies. But it's also the beginning of something new. Each and every year now, we will release butterflies at a butterfly brunch with a cause. So forming a foundation around her name, so that when I'm no longer here, there's a foundation, Miriam Carey, that supports Black young women who are interested in dentistry, because my sister was a registered dental hygienist, and also supporting the cause of saving the monarchs, because our monarchs are in danger. And I see that because the first 6 years I was able, without any provocation, to be able to order monarchs. And now I'm not able to order monarchs. I have to get painted ladies, a different species of butterfly. So, would like for Miriam's name to be carried on, and a beautiful memory, not the horrific way that she was killed, but there is justice that still has to be served for Miriam, because her killers have not been publicly named. They have not been held accountable. And so the fight continues to have Congress, because it seems like it's gonna take an act of Congress. Miriam's killing was performed at the hands of U.S. uniformed Secret Service police and Capitol Police. And so Congress can have that case reopened and have those officers held accountable. So I hope that answers the question.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. Gina, I'd like to come to you next. In the book, you highlight the role of media narratives and bias in contributing to the misinformation problem when it comes to what the public knows about state violence against Black women. You also shared in the book how every time you hear people say India's name out loud, you imagine India answering back. Can you tell us more about what you mean about that, and what we can do to continue to advocate for India and combat misinformation.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for everyone for coming here and sharing this sacred space with us. It's very solemn, but we're going to also bring in some glimpses, if you will, of the encouragement that we do have to force ourselves to walk and find it somewhere, but we find it through you all today. So, okay, a couple of things. Hearing India's name, and not just India's name, each one of us, our mothers gave us names that would means something. And when it's spoken, there's those vibrations and the frequencies, and it changes the air. So it literally can bring your attention. If someone calls your name, you're going to turn and you're going to get the attention. We need the attention of everybody, what's happening to black women who are being murdered and then silenced. There's nothing or very little being said. So no doubt you all heard some familiar names: Breonna Taylor, Sandra Bland, Tatiana Jefferson. Our hope is that the others that are in the book and that are on our shirts and that we carry in our hearts, the pain every day, that you will start to say their names as well, recognize that their lives meant more than just the hashtag that they became at the hands of state violence that is still sanctioned and still going on and still continuing. And unfortunately, oh gosh, okay, here I go, you all. I'm not gonna digress, I do that all the time. Because it's so full. We walk with death every single day, so we have to find purposeful reasons to live and to continue to live, and that our daughters and our sisters' names are never forgotten, because it could be lost in the just the din of noise with everything. So I'm sorry, I'm all over the place.
No.
Bring me in, sister.
No, I'm enjoying taking the journey with you and hearing you talk about it. But can you, before you end, can you just talk about what we can do to combat the misinformation? Because that's where you're taking us. What can we do?
Okay, I'll start with this. How do you all feel if someone's addressing you, or you are addressing someone and they ignore you? It's really crappy, right? I mean, you're addressing someone, but they are purposefully and with intentionality, ignoring you. That's what it feels like. There's no doubt that everyone knows the name of Mike Brown and some of the male names, but when you start to name the women, it's who was that? Yeah, crickets. And unfortunately for us, crickets feels like cockroaches. I mean, it's just the worst feeling that we've birthed, we've lived our lives with, we've shared with our loved ones. But I want you all to really carry that. What would it feel like if your life was snuffed out at the hands of rogue police and no one said anything, or it was just a quick little blurb and you were forgotten? It's more than it means more than the acknowledgement that yes, our loved ones existed, but you all do too. So it could, at the turn of a dime, flip. And you have to really just ask yourselves, well, what would I do? And with that in mind, one thing we can do now is support black women and their families and children who've been murdered by police. And part of that is acknowledging the problem is real and it's continuing. Yes. And it's not less than just because they're women who were murdered. Each one of us have mothers. Every last one of us came through this portal of our mother. And our daughters were mothers. Her sister. All three were killed in the presence of a child whom they loved and birthed. I'm just so much, I think of India, even just her name, it's on her birth certificate, but I chose that for specific reasons, just like your mothers chose your names. We need to understand that the ignoring, the silence, it's a continuation of the absolute pain that they've inflicted upon us. And it hurts worse because unfortunately it's even in our community and our family and our relatives. They lived, they still do. Every time you say their names, they still do. And that's what we really need you all to get with us on this. And you're reading the book, really dig deep and just light a candle and think, what would I do?
Thank you for that, for just pointing out the importance of learning and saying their names so you don't have crickets or cockroaches, which is what you mentioned. Rhonda, I come to you next. And before I ask you your question, I want to apologize for mispronouncing your daughter's name, because it's important to know the names and pronounce them correctly. So my heart goes out to you for that.
It's okay, it's okay.
You previously mentioned that an important step in getting justice for black women killed by police is to put an end to qualified immunity for police officers.
What the teenagers say, that's period.
Period.
Because at the end of the day, if we allow qualified immunity to protect these murderers, I mean, we're just going to have a whole system of rogue police, because it seems like they're multiplying in their cases. They know that they're going to be protected. You know, it's not a mistake when you intentionally stand in front of somebody and pull a gun, shoot a gun. It's not, you know, it's not an accident. They just need to have qualified immunity lifted across the nation. Everybody needs to be held accountable for their actions. I'm a retired nurse. If I hurt somebody in the process of me working, I'm going to be held accountable. Yes. The same thing with any other public safety person. You know, they need to know that they cannot just do shit and not be held accountable. And that's exactly what's happening. And they're getting promotions. You know, I don't know any officers that have been involved with police shootings that haven't gotten a raise unless they went to jail. If they went to jail, you know they didn't get a promotion. Right. But if they didn't go to jail, you guarantee they got a promotion. My officer, the officer that killed my daughter, got a promotion almost immediately. He's not with SWAT anymore, but he's gotten a promotion. He did a lateral move, but he got a promotion. So, I mean, at the end of the day, qualified immunity is something that gives them a license to kill. It's the cushion to kill.
I do want to follow up, because in the book you talk about how the stage was set for her in the final hours for her to be alone.
Yes, they isolated her. What they also did was, in the beginning, when I went to the scene, because I was there and many family members were there, I had my phone with her therapist on active. The officer took the phone from me, cut it off, and said, we'll talk to her when we need to speak to her. But what they did do was they communicated with her through my phone as though they were with me, as though they were me. I had family members that were texting me, and they were trying to figure out what was going on, and the law enforcement was answering as though they were me. I had to prove to people, when they released the phone back to me, they gave me my, I guess what they call it. Come on, give me the legal term for it. When they gave me my phone back, they released it to me.
They
released it to me.
Yeah.
I had to show people who refused to believe that I didn't have it. And they were talking to her as though, like, even when I got it back, they weren't even smart enough to delete their messages. They were still in my phone. You know, they're talking, oh, why are you doing this? You know, they were communicating. She knew the way I communicated with her and the way they communicated with her were totally different. You know, so, I mean, they cut her lights off. They cut the air off. They did all kind of stuff. I pled with them. I said, let me speak with her. Let me go in. No, that's against police policy, which I found out later on from the state's attorney that denied the case to be charged, that wasn't a police policy, that they would have normally used family members to try to support the situation. But they isolated her, you know, and she had my grandson in there. So they said they couldn't use a flashbang grenade. They said they couldn't use the smoke bombs because it was dangerous, but it was less dangerous to shoot through a wall. Because, see, a lot of people don't know that they shot her in her back through a wall. After this officer made a statement saying that he saw her aiming a shotgun at him, all of the other officers that were witness to it said they saw no such thing, and that they didn't even know why he shot, basically. You know, so again, the isolation took her over the edge, you know, because she felt like she was alone. There was no communication with family members, nothing. They barred us, basically. They followed us around while we were in the staging area, I guess to make sure we didn't communicate with her. It was a lot of things that went on that just totally went left. They said, oh, no, we're not here for her. Different things of that nature. You know, I guess trying to quell our anxiety. But they took it to the top when they shot her through a wall. You know, I just will never make rhyme or reason of them shooting her, of that officer shooting her through a wall in her back. Right.
And by the way, this was all pursuant to a traffic
A
violation.
traffic violation. You know, so, I mean, it's just a path that none of us asked for, of course, but it's very difficult to navigate. I know I don't sleep. Gina, I don't know how well you sleep. It's difficult. It's almost like it changed our DNA. When I try to explain to people that I see the change in myself, people that know me may see it in a different light. But like my mind isn't as good as it was. You know, I am traumatized. Yes. That's exactly what it is, trauma brain. You can't even think right sometimes, you know. So, I mean.
You know what? Okay, and what to echo what Rhonda was saying, the worst thought is what was the last thought that went through each one of our loved ones' minds as those flaming hot bullets were piercing their flesh. They did nothing wrong. No laws were broken. None. A child is in the presence, and that still did not stop these police from murdering our loved ones. So I want you all to really, if you can, deprogram yourselves into thinking automatically that police say something that is true, because the media will parrot for them. They exactly are their megaphone. And further, it's always their narrative, never really from the side of the family or the life of the precious loved one that was stolen. And that's a real problem. They cover up the truth, vilify our loved ones, they go on with their lives, they get retired or promoted, and we suffer. We lose our homes, you know, you name it, financial ruin, psychological, emotional, spiritual. We have to fight just to survive every single day. You want a bad day? We have it every day. Every single day. And there is no pause button. There is no stop or rewind. We're just constantly in this. So as you're reading the words that Dr. Kimberlé has gathered, you know, in the book, just, again, put yourself there and live through the words as we've written vicariously, or I know it's a nightmare, but try and think about, what if it was your daughter or your mother or your sister or your aunt or auntie, your grandma?
Talk about the fact that you never thought that you'd have to give the talk to your sister.
So it's very traumatizing to have your loved one taken by the hands of the police. It's a special type of trauma when you yourself have served on a force. I'm a retired NYPD sergeant. And as an officer, in New York City, I would tell my nephew, I have two nephews, but one of them in particular, if you ever get stopped by the police, this is how you speak to them. Tell them your aunt's on the job. I never in a million years thought that I needed to talk to either of my sisters how to interact with the police if stopped, because I didn't really think that my sisters would ever get stopped by the police. Racial profiling, you kind of look at it more being done to men as opposed to women. But my sister, who wasn't in the commission of a crime, who was driving with her baby in a car, who ultimately was shot in the back of her head and her back 5 times while she was driving away, wasn't a criminal, never been arrested, wasn't in a commission of a crime. And I never had a conversation with neither of my sisters about the talk, what to do and stop by the police. So being educated, being degreed up, doesn't make you immune from being put in a situation where you have officers who abuse their authority and commit crimes, because a crime was committed and my sister's civil rights were violated.
Okay, and another thing is, and I just thought of something, Dr. Kim, India's father, she's the daughter of a DC police officer, granddaughter of DC police officer. I myself served as a Tacoma Park Police dispatcher, and several family members are current law enforcement today, brother-in-law, Capitol Police, and my other cousins, Prince George's County Police. Do you think that really matters? Is that gonna protect any of us from none? And like Dr. in the book, never in a million years would I think, I felt distant from, oh, that's not gonna happen. But it did, and it wakes you in a way that you cannot, you wanna talk about earth-shattering, that's not even the word. To get that phone call each one of us received, knowing that we will never hear the precious voice of our loved ones, and that their children have witnessed murder of their mother right in front of them. It's beyond incorrigible. There's no words for this, and we live it every day. And rest assured, it's going to happen again. And just like Rhonda was saying, qualified immunity needs to be done away with, because they're saying that they're qualified to kill and immune from repercussions.
There you go. That's it.
Yes.
No,
Yes. Yes.
thank you for that. I think we were all privy to a very unique experience, because not just reading the book, but hearing your words just come alive. So thank you for sharing your stories. Kimberlé, I want to turn to you. You describe the public silence around the police killings of black women as conspiracies of silence and forms of dispassionate complacency. Can you walk us through what these terms mean and what we can do to end the silence?
Now I know how you felt. You know, I guess that really comes from trying to put into words what the experience was of going to the Eric Garner protest march in New York with the banner that had as many black women as we could find who'd been killed by the police at that point. And you know, participating in the chants, you know, we're shutting it down for Mike Brown, and blah, blah, blah. And then we would say something and put in, you know, Michelle Cusseaux's name. And talk about the crickets. It wasn't just the crickets. People would look at us like, what are you talking about? And so at a certain point, we decided, rather than being in the march with the banner, we would step out of the march and climb up on a scaffold so that everyone walking by, you know, could see the banner. And we got 3 different reactions. One reaction was, you know, people would give us the thumbs up, you know, like, oh yes, right? Then there were others who were like, what? You know, what? And so they would come and they would take pictures of the banner. And then there was that third group, and this is the group that I talk about when I say conspiracies of enforced silence. That third group was visibly disturbed that we had the gall to interrupt the narrative with, you know, it also happens, right? You know that it's not just your sons you should give the talk to. You know that there is more pain than what you have even imagined around this issue. So there was this impatience, this is not supposed to be here kind of response. And one guy came up and you know, he was really feeling it. He was like, where are the men on your poster? And we're like, the men are on every other poster. Every chant, everything. So this is one moment where we'll say, you know what? And even that was too much. So I was trying to think about, where does that come from? Where do people learn that? Where does the narrative about what anti-Black police violence looks like, where does it come from, and how does it get perpetuated? Because we kind of know where it comes from. It comes from the history and the reality that anti-Black violence has often been framed as a suppression and punishment of Black men, Black masculinity. We know that the narrative of lynching, which was not the truth behind lynching, but the narrative was, we got to keep these bucks in control, right? So there is a reaction to that historical mythology that Black people were lynched because they were sexually violent, as opposed to they were lynched because they were economic competitors. They were lynched because it made white people feel better to have people under their heels. So all the realities of lynching sort of got tied up in this mythology. So there's number one, that's the first problem. But the second problem is when that mythology about regulating Black masculinity becomes the definition of anti-Black racism. There is no room to tell another story about what happens to women. And by that I mean all women, right? So I wrote that as a way of saying, this is not accidental anymore. This is not unknowing anymore. This is not bloodless anymore. There are real injuries that are produced by our failure to challenge the parameters through which we understand anti-Black racism. So intersectional frameworks say we have to understand anti-Black racism through the lens of gender, gender identity, class, geography. There are so many ways that anti-Black racism functions that we don't lift up and talk about in most of our politics. And this is a call to do precisely that.
Now, I do want to ask you, before I open up for a few questions to all, and we do have one or two audience questions, I want to ask you to make a broader connection for us. So can you describe how the work of the Say Her Name campaign is linked to the efforts to challenge the attacks against the teaching of Black history and knowledge in school classrooms? More than 40 states have introduced or passed legislation that restricts what students can learn in the classroom, mainly pertaining to discussions surrounding race or racism. We think because we're in Baltimore City, we're safe, but it's happening all around Baltimore City, and it will eventually get here. How will this legislation like this, make it more difficult to address the structural issues surrounding the state violence against Black women, because it's all connected?
Well, I know my sisters have something to say about this, so I'll just say that, you know, the entire reason why there is this attack on Black history, Black knowledge, concepts, is that they're powerful. They galvanize people. The other side saw that after George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. They saw for the first time in history a majority of people in those protests actually being white folk. And they saw it happening in every state in the Union. And that was a call for them to think, all right, what is it that is bringing our kids out to support these Black bodies who have been killed by police? We didn't do it. Why are they doing it? What's happening? And what they landed on was the idea that, okay, our kids are being indoctrinated. Indoctrinated by what? Indoctrinated by, you know, there is this thing called structural racism. There is this reality that policing, bad policing, isn't simply a matter of a few bad apples. It is an institutional problem. It's a structural problem. It's a historical problem. It's always been the way that Black folks have been treated in this country. Policing came from policing slaves, right? So when young people start learning this stuff, they don't just take it for granted that this is a thing that happens and it's okay. They come out and they protest. And so that becomes the justification for coming after these ideas and framing them as indoctrination. You know you really have a problem when the truth is called indoctrination and indoctrination is called the truth. And that is what we are facing in this country these days. So it's not surprising they came after critical thinking about race, critical race theory. What I like to tell folks who sometimes are, I think, too confused to actually consider the source, to get involved in fighting back against these efforts, I tell them, look, critical race theory is thinking critically about your existence. Yes. Critical race theory is being critical of the idea that colorblindness actually shapes anything in this world. Critical race theory is the moment that you sit down and give your talk. You might be giving your talk to your son. Intersectionality tells you you need to give that talk to your son and your daughters, right? So this is why these ideas are so contested. They actually are casting attention to the continuing ways that many of the same problems that African Americans have experienced since we came here are continuously experienced, even after Barack Obama, even after the Civil Rights Movement, even after Thurgood Marshall, Jackie Robinson. We can go back to every moment where it was said, okay, it's over now. Right? And it turns out, no, it's not over. You need a prism, a lens, a way of connecting the present to the past, a way of seeing that even though institutions might claim they're colorblind, in reality, anti-black racism finds its way to get up all in those institutions, just like asbestos gets in these institutions. You know, we know now that that stuff is toxic. We pay people to come and take that stuff out of here because we want to be healthy and safe. We need to think of critical race theorists as asbestos people who are trying to figure out this is what you got up in these institutions. This is why you have to be able to see it, to understand it, and this is why you have to remove it. So the side of folks who really want this country to do better, to be better, don't want to have the kind of tragedies that we talk about, needs to also recognize that the attack on these ideas is the attack on that future. We can't get there unless we know that history. We can't be the country we want unless we understand all of the ways that our hopes and aspirations are being distorted by racism, sexism, transphobia, all of the other isms that separate what we want to be from who we currently are.
Say that again. Absolutely.
And my hope, Kim, is that they're banning these books, that these youngsters will find a natural curiosity to know what's hidden. Yeah. They can ban them all they want, but I want them to have the natural critical thinking to search out, what are you guys trying to hide? Yeah. You know, what are you trying to keep us from understanding in this day and age? Because it's been there. So why all of a sudden now it's a big secret? So I want these young people who they're trying to prevent from knowing the truth, I really want them to seek it. We're giving books away.
That's
So it's not
ATF
like
does.
you ain't got to pay for them, right? You're giving them away. So seek the truth. You know, curiosity killed a cat. Well, I want to see a whole bunch of cats laying around.
Hello, yes. And
Not in a literal death, but you know what I mean.
Right, and think of it, what is it that they really are trying to ban?
Right.
Is it really the book that has and it embodies the truth, or is it that the feelings that they feel, the discomfort? Oh, your grandfather did this, because we're only talking about a generation. Let's, really be very frank. No one wants, they don't want their children to feel uncomfortable in a classroom. Well, first of all, it's not even taught at the elementary school level. They fed us lies that we had to imbibe and eat, and then now we're regurgitating. Literally, they fed us lies. Columbus, hello, okay. So, there's so many, but what is it that they're banning? They don't want that critical thinking, and if they can get the younger generation, again, this is backlash on what they saw with George Floyd, because again, like Dr. was saying, their parents were befuddled beyond that. They're out here protesting for black people? Really? That went against everything that they would ever want for their children. So it goes beyond even, I mean, but then think about our children, our babies. You know, the young men and women who are now seeing, wait a minute, this is structurally, you know, they're talking about reverse racism. What is that? Affirmative action, they got rid of that. What is that? I mean, it all comes in. So the history is embedded, and it's true, but we're also now making history because it's unfortunately the same murders. It's cyclical. They've been doing the same stuff since when? They not only raped our mothers, they raped our fathers too. I mean, it goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and they don't want that to be exposed. Well, too late, because it is. And that's the reason why that, what does it say? The one action, the law of nature is that one action has an opposite. All right, that was not the reaction that they wanted after embedding these lies and really programming their children to think of this white supremacy, how literally it's embedded everywhere. We live it, so they don't want their children to read about it. Well, get rid of it yourselves then. Do something about it instead of trying to legislate morality or lack thereof, or what children can read, or let me just say this, go on a crusade for conformity, because that's really what they're trying to do.
I want to put out a question from the audience and open it up for everyone to answer if you feel comfortable doing so. When it comes to the erasure of black femme pain and the general lack of urgency in addressing our deaths, would you attribute it or put blame more toward the media or black men who seem less than willing to defend or uplift us? That's from the audience.
Wow. Y'all want to take that one on?
And thank you for your question.
Absolutely. Well, let me speak from the perspective of a mother, and then from being a mother and a wife at one point, and now the mother of grandsons, and what I see happening with this, I'm sorry, what's the name? Okay, I don't want to get this off. We all, our men have an equal responsibility. We're not letting you all off the hook. Okay. The media, once again, is parroting what the police say, what the politicians want them to say, but they're also, an agenda is to get you to think what they're reporting is actually factual news. That's not always the case. But let's go back in our home, because I love that question. What is happening in our homes where our men, but for, these were women that were killed, our daughters. But you see mostly women who are out here talking about it. I have to acknowledge Boo Boo over there, okay? He's fighting for his sister. But I'm saying, you see, my son's not here, and it's not to disparage him. India's father's not here, not to disparage him. He's a cop. So that's really something that, what is happening in our home where men feel that they have to lord it over women, they want women to be subservient. Oh, how dare you even say that you're a feminist? They think that that's another four-letter word and have no idea what it really means to be a feminist. You don't have to be a female to be a feminist. But this is something that goes deep into the black community as well. I'm not gonna just say that, maybe all homes, because there's dysfunction. The dysfunction is, how are we really relating to one another in our gender? Well, you want to exclude someone else because they say that they're trans? What does that really say about you? And why are you so concerned about what that person is doing to empower themselves to walk in their truth? You're putting so much focus on what they're doing. What about you? So the question is to our brothers, I want you all to, you know, it could have been your daughter, anybody's daughter. What would you do? Is there a role of protection? Who protects the black woman? Because black women uphold families. We break our backs. We make sure those children are raised. We will work 2 jobs, and then we got to kind of stroke the male ego later for all of that. What about reciprocity? So there is a responsibility, and I'm just going to say it, you know. I feel personally let down by our brothers. Because right now, even for India, I'm pretty much by myself.
And for what reason is that? It's a very lonely, but I understand it, because I drive a brother crazy, because I've been wanting to intellectualize everything, or spiritualize everything. But the question is, how do we stop this from happening? Because if they're killing the women, what does it say about our brothers? Where were they? What's happening? Is it fear?
Well,
Because-
how about, Gina, the fact that a lot of our men are removed from the homes, and that has been going on for years. I
It was
think about Claudine, when you couldn't even have a man. You had to hide toasters like you hide your man. Yeah, so a lot of the men aren't even available in the homes. You know, they're psychologically separated, physically separated. So how can they protect people who they don't even realize they need protecting? You know, it seems like this is something that has been thought about carefully to separate men from their families. You know, I mean, I could be wrong, but in my experience, a lot of men that aren't with their families don't offer a lot of support. You know, it's like absent from the mind. You know, I'm not there, so I don't feel the need to be as supportive as if I were there. You know.
You know, I don't know. I think the media is responsible for a lot. I think history is responsible for a lot. The state is responsible for a lot. The thing that's worrisome about protection is that when the state wants to kill you, there is no protection. No. And I think perhaps one of the problems is the assumption that a dead black woman is the fault of the failure of a man to protect her. That is the problem. That I theorize may be one of the reasons. It could be one of the reasons, as you talk about a lot, Gina, when people ask you as a mother, well, what did India do to get herself into trouble? There is more of a sense that gets asked of women who get killed more than the men. It's like, we can't deal with the fact that state violence just means when they want to take your life, they will. Right? So we've got to, be able to understand this as something that crosses gender. Number two, we have to resist the patriarchal idea that what happens to a woman is the primary concern of a man, the primary responsibility of a man. That is what contributes, I think, to a lot of dissension in our community, because they cannot protect us and shouldn't be expected to protect us, right? What we need to have the ability to expect is that we all defend justice for all of us, that we all show up for each other, and we don't project what happens to a woman to what she was doing, no more than we should do so if she's sexually abused. It shouldn't be, what was she wearing? Right? We know what kind of rape culture discourse that produces. You were the one that identified this is rape culture as applied to killing culture, right? So, you know, and thinking intersectionally about white supremacy and patriarchy means that we have to challenge some of the expectations. And that includes our brothers have to challenge the idea that you're at fault, and so you run. You're not at fault. Don't run. Stand up with us. Yes. Yeah.
I just want to give a special thanks to the mothers for being here tonight and doing the work to continue to uphold your loved ones' names. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
I want to thank you, Kimberlé, for always underscoring the importance and urgency of this work and holding all of us accountable to bearing witness. Thank you for your work, and thank you to the artists and performers who breathe life into these stories. Thank you for taking us on this journey. And to all of you who came out here tonight, thank you so much for joining us and engaging in this raw and deeply important work to say her name. I hope that as you leave here tonight, that you hold the names and the stories of the black women, girls, and femmes whose lives were stolen in your heart. That you continue to say her name and advocate for change. To learn more about how you can continue to be a part of this campaign, I urge you to visit aapf.com/sayhername, where you can take steps to become a Say Her Name advocate and read more about the campaign. And finally, in closing, buy the book, get it signed, read the book, learn the stories, and say her name. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.